Ever hopped in a car and thought, man, how'd they ever manage without these things? Well, today we're going back to the 1920s, way before combines were a thing, to take a look at steam-powered threshing machines.
Sounds like a fascinating deep dive.
It really is, and to help us out, we've got this awesome YouTube video featuring Bob Forbess, a real threshing machine enthusiast.
Those are some dedicated enthusiasts. What kind of stuff will we be learning about from this Bob Forbess then?
Well, he walks us through this vintage Avery thresher, and he is pumped about it.
Cool, cool. I'm always up for some vintage machinery.
And one of the things that jumped out at me was the engine, a Minneapolis built in 1922, get this, could run on wood or coal.
Wow, now that's resourceful. Fuel flexibility was definitely key back then.
For sure. And speaking of clever engineering, did you catch that cross belt connecting the engine to the thresher?
Yes. That cross belt is crucial. It's not just decorative. The engine and that thresher cylinder need to spin in opposite directions, you see, for the whole thing to work.
That's really neat. Such a simple solution to a complicated problem.
It's exactly.
So Bob really gets into the mechanics of how this whole threshing process worked, rotating teeth and stationary teeth.
Like some sort of, I don't know, aggressive agricultural hairbrush, perhaps.
Huh. That's one way to put it. I guess the goal was to separate the wheat kernels from, well, the rest of the plant.
Exactly right. That's the whole point. You got to loosen those grains up somehow.
And this whole process must have been quite the sight to see. Bob mentioned farmers would bundle the wheat into these things called shocks and leave them to dry.
Right, I've heard of that.
Then came the part that kind of surprised me. They'd pile these shocks onto horse-drawn wagons, and get this, the horses were specially trained to stay calm around all the noise and commotion.
Now, that's amazing. To think about the patience that must have taken training a horse to not freak out near a huge, loud machine like that.
Really makes you appreciate the bond those farmers must have with their animals.
Absolutely. This wasn't just a machine, it was a vital part of their life, their livelihood.
It really puts things into perspective, doesn't it?
It does. It really does.
And it wasn't just like a one farm thing either.
Right.
Bob talked about how these threshing crews would actually travel from farm to farm.
Oh, yeah, like a mobile operation,
Yeah.
bringing the technology to the people.
Exactly. And here's where it gets really cool.
Okay.
Bob was talking about these thresher dinners.
Oh, yeah.
They were a big deal, like hugely part of this whole process.
The food, the community, it was quite the event.
The farm families would make these massive meals for the entire crew. Like we're talking potatoes, meat, pies, the works.
Oh, absolutely. It was a feast. A real celebration of hard work and community.
It really makes you think those shared meals, the camaraderie, it must have made those long days a little bit easier.
Absolutely. Work is always better when it's shared, don't you think? And you know what's interesting? When you think about what came later, the combines, it's such a contrast.
Yeah, those combines kind of changed the game, didn't they?
For sure. It went from neighbors helping neighbors to, well, more of an individual thing. And sure, efficiency probably skyrocketed.
But you wonder if something was lost in the process, right?
Yeah, that's the thing about technological advancement, isn't it? There are always trade-offs. Combines streamline the work, no doubt, but they also change the social fabric of farming.
That's a really good point.
And it's not just ancient history, The same thing happens all the time. Think about how technology today changes how we work, how we connect, even how we relax.
It's true. I mean, we can talk to anyone in the world instantly, but how often do we actually, sit down face to face with our neighbors?
Exactly. We gain efficiency, but sometimes we lose connection. It's a constant tug of war between, progress and tradition.
It's really something to think about.
Makes you wonder what those farmers back then would think about how we farm today and what we can learn from them.
Totally.
Their ingenuity, their sense of community. There's a lot we can take away from that era.
Yeah, it really gets you thinking about, the whole picture when it comes to technology.
It does. It really highlights how progress, well, it isn't always a straight line. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Well, we've journeyed back to the time of steam-powered threshing thanks to Bob Forbess and that incredible Avery machine.
That cross belt, those rotating teeth, and those horses. Can't forget about those horses.
Right. And we saw how this machine, this thing built for harvesting, it really created this whole culture around it. The work, the community, it was all connected.
Those thresher dinners, those weren't just meals, those were celebrations.
Exactly. Celebrating the harvest, celebrating community. It's pretty amazing.
It's like we can almost hear the echoes of those moments, all these years later.
I know, right? It really makes you think. This deep dive, I don't know about you, but it's got me looking at those modern combines a little differently.
I hear you. It really shows that even something like a machine, something you might not think twice about, can be this window into history,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
into how things have changed.
And maybe even give us some ideas about how we do things moving forward, right?
Absolutely. So, to everyone listening, next time you see a field of wheat, think about the stories it holds. The stories, the people, the machines, and that connection between humans and technology. It's a pretty credible thing when you stop and think about it.